Okay, well, I'd like to welcome everyone to Knowledge-Driven Operations, the brain for smarter IT management and business resilience. My name is Shelley Haydock, and I'm co-hosting today with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions and featured presenter today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have some really interesting examples to share with you today, so we're really excited to get started.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before in our sort of pre-meeting, for those of you that are new to the Zoom or our webinars, we do have an active Q&A that Juan will be constantly answering your questions directly, but we will also reserve a good 15 minutes for Q&A. So feel free to type in any feedback, any specific brain examples that you want to see, and of course, all questions. And we try to get to as many of those as we can. We do have just a number of great examples, and the examples that we're showing, a lot of them we're able to share as well. So if there's a specific example that you want, after the meeting, do let our support team know or let us know in the Q&A, and we'll make sure we get those ready to go. So I think with that, we are going to get started. What I want to do is talk about why visualization and why operations can be so challenging. And it's a bit of a catch-22 in that you need as much information as you can to make the best decisions. But the more information you get, the harder it is to kind of manage it all and see it all together. And this is particularly true for business and IT. A lot of people cannot really see the forest and they're looking more at trees. So you might have a particular project, you might have particular documents, but I gather pretty much any organization that we've worked with, including our own, most companies have complex operations and projects that you're not sometimes even aware of. You might have documentation, for instance, on a particular server, or you might have a Visio map of maybe a few of your business processes. But the challenge is sort of mirroring that together so that you can sort of visualize what I like to refer to as these invisible worlds that we live in, these relationships that will really enable us to execute faster. So a lot of these challenges have to do with isolated knowledge. We have a number of people that we work with in our company, and when they leave, it's very difficult for people to get up to speed. We've also worked with companies who commission lots of analyst reports and different studies, and duplication of efforts across larger companies can also be a big issue because of the dispersed data, as well as just, over reliance on search. Sometimes when people do a search, they don't even know the keywords to type into. So search is great, but you need that context. And then finally, what we want to cover on this particular session is just the changing landscape that we all live in, whatever business, whatever brain you're creating. And by creating your knowledge-driven brain, what we really want to enable you to do is to adapt quickly, to triangulate and predict these problems that might not be the here today, but when the future comes, you are ready to go. So one of the issues you might have right now is current user interfaces are often too linear for the complex many-to-many relationships that actually exist in our organizations, particularly IT departments. And Matt's actually going to get into our network map, where one particular server or user group or document might be affected by multiple variables and contingencies. So you can't what you can't see, you can't really act on. So with the brain, you're not only going to get access to that relevant information, but you're going to be able to kind of see the broader picture, so that you can discover things and work more intelligently. So I think in general, and this can be true for any brain, We're trying to show you in this particular webinar how to create a knowledge hub that's just a little bit more than search. I already talked about some of the issues that people have with search, primarily that you must know keywords or related words, and you can't search for something you don't know exists. So even in my own personal brain, a lot of times I will type in a name of a friend and they will be connected to somebody else or some organization that there is no way I would have known about, but I've got this linkage and connection. So that's the sort of visual discovery path that we want to put you and your team on, so that you can really leverage. And the way you do that, is getting sort of into the methodology that we're going to talk about, is really mapping out with the brain's visual links and categorization system these multiple contexts and workflows. So yes, you're going to have a single point of access for all this wonderful information. Maybe you have links to stuff on the web, documentation, all kinds of things. But the brain's going to kind of be that remote control. We have customers that even have links to like Microsoft SharePoint and OneNote, just different applications that you want to be all shared in your single vision, so that you have that freedom to organize it. So some of the key steps that we like to do when we are creating that knowledge-driven brain, both for our own organization and with companies, is always, of course, thinking about simplifying access to that information. So identifying all your information sources and getting them into the brain. That way you do have that search. And of course, we do have an amazing search. It's even better with 14, and maybe Matt will share some of that. So that's not to say you're not going to be using search, because search is amazing, but that's where the single access of the brain will come in, because once you do get all that content in, you do have that powerful indexing to find things. But on top of that, once you start the search, you'll be able to visualize key information relationships. And that is really what's going to enable the context for business resilience, when you can see things. We also like, to the extent that you're working on IT management and contingency mapping, to think about adding people. We have some different thought types that we use for people mapping as well, connecting people to relevant responsibilities. That's also a very popular aspect of visualization that a lot of people don't think about. They just get their documents in, depending on how large and how shared your brain is. And then, of course, keeping it dynamic, keeping the information coming in, giving people that access with Team Brain. So, in essence, you can't really manage what you can't see. So we've had a lot of success with sort of mapping out these invisible relationships to make your organization more adaptive. So how do you get started on this? This is just this last slide is kind of my favorite, and then we're going to jump into some actual examples. But you might just be new to the software. Maybe you downloaded it and you're just mapping out, some of your personal information. You want to take this to the level of business resilience and IT management, that sort of thing. So there are a few questions you can ask yourself and make sure your brain answers when you're creating this type of brain. The number one question I like to ask people when they kind of are having their own organic brain freeze about how to get started is, what are your key projects? What are the things keeping you up at night? What are the company initiatives? You want those in there. What particular websites, URL, third-party applications are you launching that people are wasting time switching? You also want those in the brain. And the next one's kind of obvious, but it's there because it's very important. What files and documents are you working on that you're developing? And what files and documents does everyone need to share really quickly? And then the final question is, how is the information used and when do you need to use it? Why do we need to know this? Because then you can map out different contexts. Maybe a document on crisis communication needs to go to marketing, but it also needs to go to legal. So by having these connections to different departments, different people, you've got that information in place. So when there is an unpredictable event in your organization, you're sort of ready to pounce and spring into action. So that's a little bit about the presentation. Now I want to actually jump into just a few basic examples, and then Matt's going to get into the nuts and bolts of, how do we add AI to the mix of this? How do you manage documents? So this particular brain is absolutely available to everyone. This is my business resilience brain. I call it the adaptive thought network, thriving in the unknown. And I just want to show a few different brains so you get an idea of just a broader example, maybe some ideas you might want to put in your brain. Now, if you're just an individual and you still want to thrive, you can just, your goals and how they relate or particular projects. You can even put in personal projects and just different thoughts for health, any kind of key events that are happening, all the information. And then on a business level, if we go into business contingency and resilience, all kinds of things from just key things that might affect your business. For instance, obviously, we'll see how this fall, this Christmas season shapes up. But of course, last year, this was a big deal, your COVID-19 policy and operations. We also have a lot of companies that do, if you have product recalls and instances, you can have a full section on that and how to respond. Crisis communication as well, where you have all kinds of things from your support channels to your Twitter strategies to just Facebook management, even ethics teams. And then if we want to get into other topics in business continuity, you can have anything from, just a management hierarchy where you're actually looking at mapping out people and how they fit together with different people thought types. This is particularly nice for succession planning for key personnel. So if somebody leaves in your organization, how are you going to shift and grow and visualize that in your brain to kind of see how that fits together? And then just complex things that you can have a document, you can talk about it in a meeting, but seeing it all come together in a brain really offers a level of understanding and insight that you wouldn't get in just a single document. Here's another example. There's a couple companies that we're working with that are thinking about opening up an office in different areas across the world. So you can have a section on economic and geopolitical risk where you're doing your own risk assessments. All this information from exchange rate fluctuations to cross-border legal issues to the taxation in that company to even just different events that might impact the business as well as intellectual protection. So these are just ideas. We're actually going to show you how you can actually take one area of this and just create a whole new section. But I think that's kind of the overview. We're going to get into more basic examples. There's one other area that we're going to cover as well. Matt's going to get into his IT brain, but in addition to the servers and the networks that we're going to show you, you can also have different phases of your projects. So right now, I'm just kind of showing you the basic structures of brains that we have as templates for people. And then you want to fill this with information. So if you have different phases from project planning to requirements gathering to production rollout, all these different phases can be linked and visualized in your brain. And you can also do other models, David Allen, GTD, where you're defining your purpose, mission, your brainstorming, all that can come together in a way that not only gives you access to that information, but provides that framework for higher level decisions. And I think with that, we're going to jump into the details, Matt. So I'm going to pass over your way. I don't think I'm going to get into the IT management network map because I know that you're going to get started on that and go pretty deep into some cool features. Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to take over the screen. I'm sharing my screen now. And let me jump right into the brain. Can you see my screen on your end?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
That's great.
So thank you, Shelley. And a lot of those examples that you talked about today are specific examples that I'm really excited to share with you today. You've mentioned some key things, files, documents, network maps, servers, people. People sometimes forget that, people are the most valuable resource in an IT department or in a network or in any department. It's the people. So including people into the structures of data that you have is a really, really important component of the brain, and becomes a immensely valuable tool. So the first demo that I'd like to share with you today is my network map. And before we jump right into looking at a network map in the brain, I wanted to share with you a simple network map that you might be familiar with. Maybe you've drawn out your own company network map. This is a very simplified network map with 2 physical servers. So we're keeping track of the different switches, different components and applications, what rack they're on, and so forth, and how they connect to the end user. In this case, just 2 servers, 4 end users, and a lot of crisscrossing lines happening on the screen. If we want to take a look at a more advanced network map, I think I have a picture of that as well. Here's a complex network map diagram. Things start getting a little bit, I'd even say, difficult to understand and follow once we start adding additional servers, 3 servers, 4 servers, more apps, more people, more responsibility and tasks. And your network map can quickly grow into something that can no longer simply be printed out on a piece of paper. You're going to need a giant whiteboard to really visualize how all of these things are connected. And there's still a lot of missing information. Sir, I know where a server is, and I know what's being hosted or what's running on that server, but I don't know how to log into it. I don't know when that was the last time it was rebooted. There's a lot of missing pieces of information. It's like a network map that's really just Swiss cheese, because not all the data that you need is there. So here is a network map in the brain, and I'll go full screen with the brain. And once again, this is a sample brain that you can download from our website. We'll share the link with everyone. There are no real server names in this. It's, you can add what you need, download a copy of this brain to start mapping out your own network, change the thought names to match your own structure, delete what you don't need, add on wherever you'd like. So this is the framework of a network map. But as you can see, we can just go right into servers. We've got 6 different locations where our servers are all being hosted: London, Los Angeles, San Diego. This corporation has a lot of different servers. If we're averaging 4 or 5 servers per location, we've got maybe 12 to 20 servers, and we're continuously growing. So it's a lot to keep track of. So not only can I go in and just look at each individual servers, I could start off by going through my different user communities. What applications do they use, and what servers are those running on? So therefore, as an example, if I get a call from someone saying, hey, I can't log into Outlook, and it seems like no one around me can as well, I'm going to go right into applications. They mentioned Outlook, so that's a communications app. And I've got my Outlook and Exchange. I can see there's a lot happening on the screen already. Number one, I can see that it's pulling data off the MailRes database. It's hosted on the MailServe server, and that is in San Diego. So I can put a quick call into Lou, Paula, or Sarah to make sure everything is up and running in San Diego. Yeah, it looks great. The MailServe is online and running full speed. The next thing we might want to check is the MailRes database. And sure enough, the MailRes database is down. Maybe this server, SQL Prod 01, is not rebooting. That is affecting this database, which affects Outlook, Exchange, and it affects more than just people in our IT support center. It's also affecting everyone in all of our sales reps. Our sales reps can't access their email right now until this problem is resolved. So I suddenly have a bigger picture of what's going on. I can find that the database is the problem. When I speak to, let's see, MailRes database, Terry manages the MailRes database. And of course, I click on Terry. I've got all of his contact information, maybe meeting notes and so forth. Terry's not available right now. So it looks like I'm going to have to restart the MailRes database. Luckily, I've saved those instructions here in this brain as well. And this is something that I really particularly like. In a real world example, I personally don't have access or knowledge of every single server that exists within my company. But from time to time, there are a few servers that I have access to. And if I'm ever given any type of information where that server is located, my own organic brain isn't going to remember off the top of my head the key code to the server room to walk, if it's a physical server on site, walk into the server room, go to the third rack, the fourth shelf from the top, 3 red buttons, click the middle red button. No way am I going to even be able to repeat that 10 or 15 minutes from now. I'd need to record that information in my brain. And here I've been given and provided information on how to reboot the MailRes database. Maybe this is an ongoing problem we're running into. So I've got a link that I can go to, a specific URL. Again, without the brain, this URL would be my browser bookmarks and favorites. The login information would be somewhere else. I've got a screenshot, so I know what the screen is going to look like along the way. I have to go from the home button to resources to all to share. There's a process. There's a lot of information that I need to go through to get to the point where I finally can reboot this server. And when it's done, I'm keeping track of how often I reboot the server so that we can see a pattern here. Back in April, I restarted it 3 times. We had some frequent issues. We've been ironing those out. You can see the next restarts, May, June, jumped from August, all made it all the way to November. So we're making progress, but still reboots are necessary from time to time. And at any point in the notes, let's say I reboot the server today, I just go into my note and I hit Control D, or I can go up to the tool tabs up above and click on Insert Date and Time. So I just make a quick note of when that server was rebooted, so I know in the future when I do get in touch with the manager for this particular device, share with them my interactions on that server. We're going to be talking more about notes and file attachments here in just a bit. And then in case I have even further difficulty understanding what I'm doing or logging in, I've got a link, a helpful Microsoft link on how to reboot a server in case I need that as a resource as well. So all the tools that I need to better understand my network structure, the people that are involved, the information that is involved, what the URLs are, what the login information is, what the process to follow is, and so forth, all easily accessible. And most importantly, with all of these different attributes, who they're affecting within my organization. That is some very helpful information as well. And these are all done with thought types. Thought types are a way of classifying pieces of information without adding extra links into the brain. I know from the icon, little stack of disks there, that's a database. A couple of boxes with some lines, I know that's a server. A little sort of screen pops up, that's an application. A group of people, that is a user community. So these thought types help me identify all of these different components without actually having to draw them under specific categories within the brain, additional thoughts and stuff being displayed within the plex of the brain. So how did all of this come to be? Let's actually pause at this moment, and I'm going to go back to my network map. And let's say I have a new server coming on board, and I just want to share with you how quickly you can start mapping this information out within your brain. If I go into my servers by location, and let's just pick Chicago. As you can see, Chicago currently doesn't have any existing servers. Our Chicago office is maybe working with virtual servers or just linking into ours, but they're about to get their first physical server. So I'm going to click and drag a link off of the gate to create a new thought. And we'll just call this Chi-Town 1. So this is the new server name. I mentioned those thought types. Each individual thought can have one thought type. They can have multiple tags. Tags are attributes of thoughts. I often set up tags as being something that's, urgent or next week or back burner, what have you. You can set up any type of tags you'd like. I saw a couple of thoughts with different tags in here. We'll visit those in a moment. But for now, I'm just going to click to open up the thought properties display. And I'm going to say this is a thought type of a server. So there you can see I've got a little icon that's now appearing. So I'll always know that that is a server. Hover over it. I see that it's a server hosted in Chicago. My good friend Tim that works out of the Chicago office. Notice if I just start typing in a few letters, the brain shows me all thoughts that match whatever it is I've typed in so far. So I'm going to link that over to Tim. So I've got Tim's contact information easily available. He'll be in charge of this particular server. And now I can start bringing in some additional documentation. Now, if I know it off the top of my head, or if I'm on a phone that's with my boss saying, hey, we want you to set up this server, make sure that only the IT department has access to it for now. Great. I just jump over into the notes, server setup starts on, and I hit Control D once again. I love inserting date and time notes into my brain. So I just keep track of when I started this particular process. And Bill says that only IT department will have access for now. So that might change at a later date. Any further information, notes about what he wants installed on the server, SQL or SQL Management Studio, whatever attributes he wants, I can fill those notes out there. Or if I have existing data, such as some documents or files, and I'll bring those in as well. So I've got a 2024 review. So I just came out of a meeting where we reviewed, what we're going to be installing on this server, how it's going to be used. And I've got that now all in a PDF. Someone put that information together in a PDF. I'm going to click and drag and bring that right into the brain. So I always have access to it. Now, you notice when I drag and drop into the brain, it moved that file internally into the brain. That's a setting that you can choose for your installation of the brain. The default out of the box, when you drag and drop into the brain, is going to be creating a copy of that file. I go into the brain settings and change my drag and drop attributes to move files into the brain. The choice is yours, whatever works best for your environment. I could also simply be linking to these files. But those are just some basic settings you can utilize in the brain to really make the brain fit your business process. If you're linking to files on a shared drive or moving data into the brain so that when you sync it to the cloud and access it from another location, the file will be there if it's an internal attachment. So there I've got a PDF. I'll grab another. Maybe this is an order for a switch or some more RAM that I did on Amazon. Once again, I want to keep track of that. So I drag and drop into the browser. PDFs load up right there in the content area. So I have easy access to that document. If it's a Word document, I think I have a Word document. Yeah, server restart process. So I click and drag and bring that into the brain as well. This server restart process is, no server is ever typically going to be the same. If you're rebooting a server or a database or a service on the server, maybe there's certain steps that we need to follow, and internal attachments or shortcuts to files will launch in their native application. So that launched, as you can see over here in Word. And I've got screenshots and so forth in this document. It's going to be very helpful for me to refer back to in the future. And then finally, web pages as well. So we've got documents of any type coming into the brain. We can have web pages. So I've got a couple of things about installing, different processes and procedures for installing servers or getting them all set up. And to do that, I'm going to grab the icon in the address bar and drag that right into the brain. So icon in the address bar, drag and drop into the brain, and you get a web page that loads up right here in the content area of the brain as well. So once again, easy access, very easy access to all those PDFs and web page attachments that you're bringing into the brain. So all of the different resources going into this project are very, very easily accessible, and they can be from disparate information sources. Shelley mentioned earlier, you've got people sending you web links. You've got people sending you emails and files and documents. Maybe they're sending you links to Google Drive or Google Sheets. And in fact, I've got a Google Sheet here Let's say this is sort of maybe some type of checklist of who's going to have access, yes or no, to this particular server or different components on the server. So we really need to keep track of that. Once again, I'm just in Google Sheets right now. I can drag and drop that into TheBrain. And this brings me to a really, really good point. Let's go ahead and open this in TheBrain. And you can see that I can go in and actually edit whether or not, a person has a particular access to a component of this particular server. So I've opened Google Sheets in TheBrain's built-in content area, and I can continue on editing that document in the content area just from that Google Sheets link in TheBrain. Now, the interesting thing that I wanted to share with you is that I am running TheBrain 14 today. So this is TheBrain 14 beta. If you want to know more about TheBrain 14 beta, you can go to www.thebrain.com/TheBrain14. Yes, you can join the beta testing community. It's free to download a copy of TheBrain 14. It is stable enough that we absolutely know you're not going to be losing any data or content. There may be cosmetic issues that you run into. It is still beta software, so it still is in development. And that more advanced browser feature setting is a feature of TheBrain 14. So that's the first version 14 feature I've come to, so I wanted to pause and bring that to your attention. I'll share a few more with you. Shelly was on our stable release version. You don't feel comfortable running TheBrain 14? Not a problem. You could run TheBrain 13, download that from our website as well. So one last component, I'll just drag and drop one last web page, again, from the my browser address bar right into TheBrain. So I've got multiple web pages that I'm accessing, Google Sheets that I'm documenting or editing in the content area, along with my own personal notes and file attachments, people that are related to this project. I suddenly have a better scope of what's going on with this particular server, what its status is in the notes, what's been installed so far. I can create checklists of what still has to be done and so forth. But again, a clearer picture of how this fits into my network structure. Now, the next brain that I want to share with you, I'm going to full screen back with TheBrain, and I'm going to jump into another sample brain. This is our software development and IT management brain. And this brain is an incredible resource. If IT is your passion and your field of expertise, this is a really, really great brain for so many reasons. Number one, there's a mini network map in here, so you can use that as sort of an example to start developing your own visualized network map within TheBrain. But you can also go through and start looking closer at programming languages that are popular and current right now. We try to keep this brain up to date. This is a great brain that has many of those thought tags. Remember, thought tags are attributes to a thought. So C++, for example, sort of an older programming language as far as I'm concerned. But as you can see, it's thought tag. So if I hover over the thought, I can see it's a programming language. Thought tags are object-oriented, static typing, and functional. Whereas other ones are object-oriented, static typing, and what was this other one that was here? Procedural. So we've got different attributes to particular coding languages. It's always going to be a programming language, but it may have different attributes to it. SQL, as you can see, is classified as declarative. So we've got all these different sort of categories they fit into that are identified by their thought tag. And once again, if you wanted to see all procedural programming languages, we can come up to our thought tags list and go down to imperative. There it is, procedural programming. So if I just wanted to focus on procedural programming languages that I'm going to be using for this new application that I'm building, these are going to be my 6 different choices that I'm going to start with. So just a wonderful resource, this particular brain. But But specifically in this brain, I wanted to share with you. And actually, I just noticed a note. I want to go back to my other brain in just a moment and share a few more features with you. But in this brain, I want to share some of the new AI features that are available in the Brain 14. Now, we've had several different demos of sharing the Brain's AI integration into the web app, where we can create thought types, thought structures in the actual Plex. You could do that here in the Brain 14 as well. So if I wanted to create a whole new list of programming languages, I could use AI to generate a thought structure or create new child thoughts for me. In this example, let's say I go into developmental tools and I'm installing this new server, remember, in Chicago. And we just decide, you know what, let's make a backup server just in case. It's going to be a physical installation, but we also want a virtual server as a backup. And I started doing my research, and I'm really torn between Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. Both of them have benefits, pros and cons. I'd say more cons than, or more pros than cons on either of those two. They're sort of the juggernauts of virtual servers these days. But which one am I going to choose? I've been tasked with making this decision. I've got a lot of research to do. So I'm going to create a little jump thought from my research, server research. So this is my own thought, server research. And actually, I want to link this up to the Microsoft. I should have it here. There it is. Microsoft Azure is mapped out here as well in cloud computing. So there's Microsoft Azure. And so I've got easy links to go to both web pages. I could do my own research, page by page through their web research, or I could let AI give me a subtle push. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over to the note and click on AI and generate a new note. My new note is going to be Amazon AWS versus Microsoft Azure for small business. And we can generate the word count, how creative we want our results to be. Do we want our results to be in English or Hungarian or one of 78 different languages? I'm going to go ahead and generate this note. And as you can see, AI is giving me a nice comparison between these two server types: pricing, features, flexibility, performance. This is really giving me a boost in the right direction. So I can start focusing on all of these different attributes. Some of them I may not have, integration with existing systems. I'm going to go ahead and accept this change. And I want to highlight this feature as well. I can accept, redo, or discard these changes that AI has introduced into my brain. I'll just save us some time. I won't redo it. I'm going to accept that. But integration into other existing systems, I didn't even think of that. What are the people in my Chicago office going to be using most often? What if I install something that is not compatible with Office 365? Obviously, Microsoft Azure probably is. So that's a plus for Azure in that scenario. So I've got a lot to evaluate there, but this is incredibly helpful, and already just right off the bat, seeing that one little component kind of pushes me in the right direction with the decision that I'm going to make. That's one of the many different AI features that are built into the brain. And I'm going to share one more with you as well. Another task that I've been assigned is building a new CRM system. And I've started some research in this area of my brain. So under applications, CRM apps, there's ACT, there's Remedy. Maybe building my own SAP CRM system is going to be the way to go. But I decided to have a little think tank get together. So I chose specific people from different departments: the accounting department, the sales team, the software support team, and so forth. And we had a nice little roundtable discussion about what we want out of us, what they want, what their department wants out of a CRM system. So this is just a long meeting note. This was a very long meeting. You can see if I were to print this out, I scrolled a little fast at the beginning. This would probably be about 5 or 6 pages long of everyone's input and content. So it's a lot to digest, a lot to go through. But I want to sort of build on my collective intelligence here. I've collected all of this valuable information. Now it's time to transform this information into action. And again, I can use AI to sort of to help me along the way. So with an existing note, I'm going to click on the AI button, and I'm going to extract action items from a note. I've done this several times now with some of the notes in my brain, whether it's a meeting note or just an ongoing thought process about how a new feature is going to work, or how a new server is going to be put together, different components that I'm looking for or interested in. And the brain scours through this very, very long note. And as you can see, it gives me a checklist. And I'll go ahead and just accept this without redoing. So I've got about 15 to 20 different steps out of this 6-page document. I can go through and just start checking each individual component off the list. Be prepared to pivot. So that means have a backup plan. Consider different types of CRM systems. So again, just going into the backup, the cost is an important component that quite a few people brought up. So that went into my checklist as well. Read user reviews of potential CRM. I should highlight where I'm pointing out. These are all really, really great nuggets of information out of this long, ongoing document that I have. And like I said, I've done this before in not only my documents, but documents I have received from others. Hey, you missed the meeting. Here are the meeting minutes. Here are the meeting notes. It's 20 pages long. All right. What's the summary? What are the 20 different steps that I need to take in overviewing this content? It saves a lot of time. And as I check each individual item off the list, or if I find a list that really doesn't make sense, or an item, you can continue on editing and modifying. So I can delete that out of the note. That's not a step I'm interested in, and really focus my time and effort into the summary of this particular document. Now, the next thing that I wanted to share with you actually is rolling back to my network map. I'm going to go back to my home thought. We saw earlier all of the different example network maps that are out there. And of course, you can do a search for what does a network map look like on Google, and you'll see those exact same screenshots that I sampled earlier, going all the way from very basic to just these condensed, unwieldy maps of components, missing pieces of information in a network map. So here in the brain, I'm actually going to minimize the notes. There's some buttons over on the splitter bar between the content area and the Plex. And I'm going to make the fonts in the Plex just a little bit smaller. And I'm going to switch from what we call normal view into, first we'll go into outline view. And outline view here, I'll hit the minus sign a few times to come back to just one level deep. Outline view is a much more linear display of the structure that you're putting together within the brain. But it also helps you get a bigger picture visualization of what's happening. If I just want to review all of my applications, I can hover and click the plus sign and review my applications. If I just want to look at my CRM apps, I'll expand those. Communication apps, I can expand. No, I'm not interested in those. So I'll hover over again and hit the collapse button. So you can meticulously go through and create the view that you are most interested in, or just use the plus minus signs to continuously expand outward to see more information. And I can go into what we call mind map view. And I'll just click the plus one more time. But eventually, as you can see, I can visualize every thought in an entire brain. So if I am looking for that big picture overview of all my servers and where they're located, and the documentation I have on them, I can certainly set up that structure. It obviously helps with a larger monitor and higher resolution. I broadcast at a very low resolution for webinars so that I'm not taking up too much bandwidth. But I've got another monitor off screen, and from time to time, a project that I'm working on, I'll send the brain over there and open it up in expanded view, mind map view, to really sit back and get a bigger picture of what's happening. You know, right here, right away, I can see my Dubai office has no servers being hosted there. So if suddenly we have a new client that we're working with, we're going to have a new influx of servers because they've got multiple different individual test servers for each component that we're building for them. That might be a great place to look into hosting all of these individual servers. They're ready and willing to host some servers there. Chicago only has one. Maybe we'll unload a few servers there as well. So you can start seeing where all of your resources are pooling or being utilized and make better business decisions based on that information. And of course, at any time, I can go right back to normal view and bring back my Plex to start navigating through my brain with a more focused, structured view of this information. And let's talk a little bit more about those thought types and tags as well. You saw that I set up a server earlier with, if I go into Chicago, here, I'll just type in real quick, Chicago, and we'll go right back to that Chicago thought. And I've got just the one server here, which is going to be monitored by Tim. But let's say we have a new vendor that's also going to be available. You know, Tim, obviously, he's only human. He can't work 24 hours around the clock. We're going to be dumping and unloading some really heavy equipment on this Chi-Town 1 server. And we need 24-hour round-the-clock surveillance. If this server goes down, it needs to get rebooted right away. This is for a VIP client, and we want to make sure that we are really rolling out the red carpet here. So since Tim isn't a robot and doesn't work around the clock, we're also going to be hiring a couple of vendors to step in and give them remote access. So they'll be available during sort of what we call off hours. You know, Tim will be there for peak hours, and our vendors will be available for off hours for rebooting or servicing this particular server. Fantastic. And one of the vendors is, we'll just say Roger. And of course, on Roger's thoughts, I'm going to have his phone number, his email, all of his contact information, the hours he's available. There will be a lot of information over in that note. But I also want to categorize Roger as a vendor. Since Roger is remote, Roger's a great resource. He could also check in on those servers in Dubai. He could check in on servers in Hong Kong or around the world, wherever we're hosting servers at any time during his hours. That's great. And we're going to be hiring a few more vendors. So I am going to create a new thought type. So the new thought type is vendor. And this is a new type. And as you can see, it creates a thought in the brain, but notice it has rounded edges. Anytime you see a thought with those rounded edges rather than square edges, that is a thought type. You can choose to visualize those in the Plex or not. If I right click, I can say, do not visualize when it's the parent thought in the Plex. So it's still, Roger is still a vendor. See when I hover over, but that vendor link is not being visualized. I can go up to my list of thought types and go down to vendor, and I can see it that way. I can also click on vendor to open up the properties. I can assign an image that all of my vendor thoughts, very helpful. If you recall, my databases all had cylinders. My servers all had boxes. My cities have little maps on them. So all of my vendors, I'll select a stock icon from TheBrain's 2,000 plus stock icon library. And I've got all these different categories. I can search, have TheBrain make suggestions for me and so forth. I see this little badge. I like it. I'm going to go ahead and select that badge. So all vendors have the badge, and all vendors have sort of a brown background rather than the default sort of clear background. That doesn't stand out enough. So I'm going to go back to vendor and let's give it a different color background. We'll say blue. So you can come back and tweak and modify. And these are universal changes. So all thoughts that are vendors. If I create other vendors that are linked up to other servers and other areas of my brain, I make them a vendor, they're going to inherit all these attributes, the icon, the color coding, and so forth. So I can easily identify them in my brain and easily find them at a later date. And also, you may notice for our thought types and tags, they can be nested as well. A vendor is a person. They're a resource, but they're also just all my people are resources as well. So I want them to follow under my people categories. So I can go to the people thought tag and link people. There's vendor down in my past thought list, link them up. I have now nested vendor under the category of people. So easier to manage within these drop-down menus, but I don't have many tags in this brain. But also when I do a search, I can filter by people. I'll see managers, I'll see engineers, I'll see vendors and executives, or I can filter my search results by vendors, and only vendors will show up in my reports. So very, very helpful to nest your thought types that way. And as you can see, thought tags. Oh, this brain didn't have very good thought tags. Here's a brain with many, many thought tags. Those are nested and categorized very effectively as well. So thought types and tags, a little bit more of an advanced feature within the brain, but in these scenarios, very, very helpful for understanding all the different attributes of different components within your network map. And then the final component that I wanted to share with you, we keep mentioning that, people are such a valuable resource within your brain. I've got another brain, and I don't think Shelly shared this brain earlier. This is a sample brain that I use on my Brain 101 classes, by the way. Brain 101 is a class that we hold every Friday, and it is really an introduction into the basic features. I covered today really quickly, creating a thought, adding some attachments, adding some notes. We really slow things down. If you're new to the brain and you found today's webinar a little bit overwhelming, I encourage you to join us for a Brain 101 class. We hold them almost every Friday, and you can sign up for 1, 2, 5, as many as you'd like. And I always like to share new features with you, but also I go through the basics as well. And this is a brain that I typically open because it's a sample business brain. And the people in here are structured in that, once again, you have a better understanding of your resources, what projects people are working on, what their capabilities are, their fields of expertise. So in this brain, if I just start clicking down through operations, I can go right into HR, and I'll go into my staff list. There's a bit of a hierarchy here. There's Barbara. She's our CEO, and all the people that report directly to Barbara. So Terry, he's an executive VP. All of his, I've got access to his assistants, so I can contact them, give them a call if I need to get in touch with Terry, or look at all of the account managers that report directly to Terry and click on any one of those to pull up all of their credentials, their information, meeting notes, phone numbers, email addresses. If I know their Twitter handle or what have you, I can keep track of all that information, who reports to that person, and most importantly, what projects they're working on. So people management is, like Shelly mentioned at the very beginning, often a sort of an overlooked attribute of IT. People are the most valuable resource we have. So therefore, understanding where their powers are, where their strengths are, is going to give you more of a clear picture of your IT department, your strengths, and may help you make better decisions. So there I can see what projects Fred is working on. Maybe I've got a new client that we're onboarding. Who are we going to assign this new client to? Anna has her hands full with 3 existing clients as well. Jana has 3 clients she's working with. Alex has 1 client. He's going to be assigned this new client. And just by mapping out and maintaining the that information within my brain helped me make a quick executive decision on the next step, the next process in this particular scenario. And so with that, that wraps up everything that I wanted to share with you today. For my network map, software development, and IT management, all the way into people. Shelley, let's throw it now into QA to see if we have
great.
any
And
questions.
a ton of examples.
Mhm.
Real quick, I want to cover the elephant or the release in the room, because I was on 13, you're on 14, and
That's right.
Juan, of course, doing a great job of getting people those links to the 14 beta. Just a lot of people were wondering, when is it going to be the official release? Somebody mentioned that they were a little impatient. So just to be real clear, if anyone really wants 14 right now, you absolutely can use it. Like, you can go to our discussion boards and chat with Juan and Matt about it. Get your hands on that early release. It is not the official release yet, because there are a few little bells and whistles that our amazing team is still working out. So just to clarify, and also, I also want to let you know, because I'm not sure, sorry, I was busy on Q&A, Matt. I don't know if you covered it. My brain, my business continuity brain, I used AI in 13. So just to clarify, we've got some amazing features on AI in 14 that are extremely cool for the desktop. That being said, if you are a business user that needs to stay on Gold Master official releases, pretty much everything, like I think 99.9% of what we covered today, you can still do in 13. So that means all your business mapping, all your project management, and AI. The only thing with AI is you have to go on to app.thebrain.com to generate that AI. And I have a little confession to make. That whole section on supply chain management and that geopolitical risk section, I used app.thebrain.com 13 AI to create that. That wasn't me. So anyway, because there's a lot of back and forth. And of course, Lisa was asking about what language model or AI service we're using. And yes, we're using OpenAI ChatGPT. We covered that, and we continue to evolve that. So those are just kind of the big picture questions. We'll get into the demo, but I just really wanted to cover and also the whole 14. And if you purchase today, there's no reason to wait, because everyone thinks back since like June who's purchased gets a free upgrade to, or what date, I guess I should clarify. I mean, back to a couple months, it gets an official upgrade of 14 anyway. And of course, if you're on services, that's all part of it, and Team Brain. So anyway, that is 14. We did have some questions earlier about project management. Gary had asked how to create a project plan and track that project with the brain, the progress. So that would probably be more of the project management brain, where I like to use project types, where you can actually change the status of a project by pending project, completed project. I'm not sure if we have time to cover that, or we're on there, or if Matt, yeah, exactly. So these, so there's a lot you can do with thought types and tags and conveying status. So this is a whole other webinar, but since you asked the question, Gary, I'll just let you, Matt, dive a little bit into using thought types. And there's another question about types. Using thought types to communicate status and the phases within tracking project for project management was the specific question.
And it's certainly a personal choice, whether you choose to use actual existing, what we call native thoughts, that I've just created a new thought. Remember earlier, I talked about those square borders. That's just a native thought, a thought that exists in the brain. Thought types have those rounded borders. Whether you choose to categorize your phases of a project as a thought type or as a native thought, that's a personal choice. And you can always go to an existing thought and turn it into a thought type as well. A little bit more of an advanced feature, but the capability is there. So Alpha Corporation, if I click to open up the thought properties, you can see these are all of the different thought types I can choose from. So this is currently a green lighted project. We're moving forward with this particular project. And I can go to this green lighted projects to see all of my different green lighted projects. And it's a little strange. I have a thought called green lighted projects, but this could be my Alpha Corporation website, Beta, Delta, and so forth. So these are all my green lighted projects. Well, let's say we hit a little bump in the road and my client doesn't have the funding to move forward with their new website development that they're working on. We're mapping everything out. We need to pump the brakes a little bit and wait until they get all of their ducks in a row. So this has now gone from a green lighted project to a project that is stalled. So I simply changed that to a stalled project. And now when I go back and visit all my green lighted projects, as you can see, beta is not there because beta is falling under a stalled project. And I can see all of the other stalled projects that happen to be moving, we happen to have within the organization.
Yeah, and the thought type's a really nice way to auto categorize and code projects. You can when you're sunsetting projects. And I love this. I got this from military and defense lessons learned section. So the past projects are still there for reference. So there is a lot of dynamic organization beyond the links that you could do with the types and the colors.
And here's where those colors, the colors aren't just, Shelly and I talk about this often. They're not just fun to use. They're really useful. These are all the different writing projects that I'm working on. One is green lighted, one is stalled. I don't need to click on the thought to find out, what phase it's in. Visually, I can just see that yellow light and I know that's a stalled project. The client doesn't have the funds to move through. But my press release that I'm doing for my 2023 writing project is moving forward. So very, very helpful. Just visual cue in your brain to utilize those thought types effectively with colors.
And Stefan has a question about what is the best way to link two brains with each other?
Oh, sure. So let's say my company brochure that I'm putting together is also going to be referenced in my, expansion of the Chicago project that I worked on in my other brain. So I'm going to jump over to my other brain and I'm going to go to my Chicago thought. There it is. And this is that new server that I'm putting together with my client. And this is all going to be publicly available. We really want to promote this. But all the information about this project is here in this brain that I'm maybe sharing with one group. And I'm collecting all of this for a marketing campaign that I'm doing as a writing project. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to copy the local thought URL. When you sync a brain to the cloud, it then can have a web thought URL. So you can have a web thought URL or a local thought URL. So I'm going to copy I copied the web thought. I want the local thought. Copy the local thought URL. Now I jump over to another brain and my company brochure. I'm going to be gathering a lot of information off of this other area of another brain. I'm going to paste the web link. And now when I start working on this company brochure, I've got all my different resources, key taglines, cool graphics that I've licensed for this document. It's going to be fantastic. The data about the server and the installation dates and so forth itself is all here in another brain. I just click and the brain follows a simple rule. When you click on an attachment, it launches that attachment in your operating system's native application. So if I've got a .doc file, it's going to open in Word. If I move that brain over to a Mac, and I don't use Word on a Mac, I use a Word emulator called MacWord, then it's going to open MacWord if MacWord knows how to open a .doc file. So here it opened a thought in a brain, so it launches the brain and takes me directly to that thought. So linking between two brains, very, very easy process. It's just up to you if you want to gather or capture the local thought URL to stay in the local brain app, desktop app, or the web thought URL.
All right, great. And then Adrian had a question about how easy it is how do you update and maintain your brain. And Juan gave her a couple answers on utilizing the reports. But I thought that was kind of an interesting question worth sharing with the group, because as you grow your brain, obviously, you do need to maintain and keep things up to date. So maybe a few tips, and I know this again is another webinar topic, but
that's exactly. I know Shelly and I are both
tricks.
thinking 202. Yeah.
And before you do answer that, I also want to let everyone know really quick, for those of you who do need to leave on the hour, I want to thank you for your time. A lot of great questions. We're going into overtime for about 10 more minutes. So I've kind of got my questions. Juan will throw a few more. So if you can stay, fantastic. If not, we do have a recording of this that you will be emailed. And a lot of people were also asking for your network map brain as well, Matt. Okay. So we're gonna be posting all of that. Anyway, feel free to stay. We're going to go for another 5-10 more minutes, depending on how many more questions are coming in. And I'll hand the rest of that to Juan, because he's been jamming away on Q&A. Thanks so much, Juan. But I did want to make sure before we officially end and go into overtime that we got the updating question in, because I thought that was very interesting.
Yes. Well, we certainly, I know Shelly and I are on the same brain wavelength there, most likely. We haven't, because she mentioned webinar, and I'm automatically thinking 202. We've got a webinar that happens 2 or 3 times a year called TheBrain 202, and it's all about gardening in your brain and going in, maintaining and editing. Now, editing for me happens on a daily basis. If I go into my brain and I see a thought in the wrong location, or I'm adding, I'm constantly adding notes. Once notes reach a certain point, maybe it becomes a different thought, or I reclassify it. So those changes are happening as you're using your brain database. And I am in my brain databases on a daily basis, whether it's on my iPhone or here on the desktop. So I'm gardening constantly. However, from time to time, yes, it's a great idea to run some reports within a brain. Now, this particular brain that I'm in is a collaborative brain. Team Brain licensing allows you to have multiple editors on the same brain database. So if I go to click on online, brain access and sharing, I can see that Chase and myself both have access to this particular brain. Chase may have added something. I may have added something. I can always find recent changes. Like, let's just see, it's been me today adding a lot of stuff. But if I scroll through this list or change to find, all changes within the past 365, 60 days or what have you, I can find Chase's edits and modifications as well. But I can also run a report. So I like to click the icon right here next to the search box, but you can also click on View Report. And if I just refresh, I have an alphabetical listing of all thoughts in this brain. This isn't a huge brain. This is a sample brain, 137 thoughts in this brain. But I can go through and meticulously, review these thoughts. Do I have the correct phone number for Nancy? There she is. Again, it's a test thought, so there's nothing there. But I can go through and click these thoughts one by one to see if they have the information that I'm looking for. And if I'd like, I can review all thoughts with attachments. So all thoughts with internal attachments are all thoughts with external attachments. As you can see, I typically don't keep external attachments in my brain. But also from time to time, if you're deleting thoughts, again, that's a 2-part process. First, you forget, and then you delete a thought. We cover that in those Brain 101 classes that I talked about. You might want to review how many forgotten thoughts do I have. So as you can see, I've got 3 forgotten thoughts in this brain, and I can right click and then permanently delete that thought. I can visit that thought in the structure of the Plex to review the content to make my decision before I decide to delete or what have you. So I can always review those forgotten thoughts, or thoughts that may have become what we call an orphan thought. It's been unlinked from everything. So it's just sort of a satellite thought that's floating out there. Again, you can run reports to find that data, sort of check on the health and data and content of your brain. We've got an online forum, and there's a group of users that really like to show their statistics talk about, how big their brain has become, or how many links between thoughts they have. And that's located over here in File, Statistics. So you can see the actual size of your brain, how many thoughts you have, links, how many links per thought. So the more cross references you have, one thought that falls under 6 categories, you're 6 to 1 in links for that one thought. So a lot of helpful information there to really let you better understand your brain as it grows and evolves. People take screenshots of their statistics to keep track of the brain size and evolution over time.
And then, of course, as a
Yeah.
team brain, there's a list of recent changes as well. So, in terms of maintenance, that chronological order, and I think Matt kind of showed you with the reports, whether individual, you'd use reports to go by date. Another cool way to maintain your brain is to look at your oldest thoughts and kind of work backwards. And then conversely, if you're on team, you can see that listing of who's done what. So there is a timestamp and chronology that is logged in your brain. So that's another little tip in terms of maintenance. And then just in terms of, let's say you found something, this is a good segue into Stefan's follow-up question about, and he said, how do I select a tree to get rid of or to modify? And so that's getting into sort of mass selection and editing, whether you want to delete it or move it or copy. So, I guess in relation to, the reports, can you show us real quick how to sort of mass select and do mass actions on thoughts?
Sure. Well, I don't want to delete anything from this brain, but I can still mass select and maybe even copy some of that content
copy into a new brain.
Put into another brain. Yeah. Let's say someone is onboarding at TheBrain. As Shelley mentioned, TheBrain is a great way to preserve your resources, your people's memories and their process and what they know about your organization to pass it on to others. Let's say that we have someone that's interested in all of our server locations, and they're putting together, is this the best location for this server, depending on what it contains and so forth. So, and they want that in a document. Okay, I'm going to go to servers by location, and I'm going to control click. I'm going to do this pretty quickly. This is a little bit more of an advanced feature, and we do cover this in the Brain 202. So I control clicked on a Windows machine. You would command click on a Mac, and it adds this thought into my selection box. And I can control click other individual thoughts. I can control click on a gate. If I can control click again on a thought that is currently being highlighted, it removes it. So it's like a toggle switch. And you can even control and drag a frame around a grouping of thoughts. So now I've selected 7 thoughts into my selection box. I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to click on edit and select related thoughts, all childward thoughts for 4 generations away, adding them into our selection box. So just 4 generations away from servers by location, I've got 47 thoughts, childward, down below this particular thought. So in other words, I did not select any jump thoughts. So great, I've added those all into my selection box, and this other individual user says, hey, I want to receive all of that information sort of outlined in a Word document. I can right click in my selection box, and these are all the different choices I have. I can forget these thoughts if I am sort of cleaning house. I don't need this branch anymore. I can forget it, then delete it. I can create a document, and that opens up each note, as you can see, goes in. I can create this and turn this into a PDF. This is probably a really good option. But in this case, they don't need all the notes, all the login information and screenshots and so forth. So I am simply going to right click and copy as a text outline. And then I think I have Word open. I don't. So I am going to open Notepad. There it is. Where's my Notepad? Yeah, that's it. Okay. So I'll say File, New. So here's Notepad, and I right click and paste. And this is an outline structure of these thoughts. Oh, this comes in handy so many times, actually, to have an outline of all your thoughts. So you've got a better understanding of sort of the flow of the project that you're working on, or you could share this with someone that doesn't use the brain and they can say, well, wait a minute, why is the InBest database on the X2 server in London? This app is only used by our Los Angeles team. We might as well move that server over. So you've got an outline view of this content. These little pound signs means that word exists elsewhere. So Exchange Outlook is running on the mail serve, but it is also retrieving information from a database in another location. So there you can see Exchange Outlook already exists under MailRes DB, the database. So that's what the little pound sign is for. So a lot of different options that you have with copying entire branches of thoughts and what you want to do with them. Maybe copy them and move them over to a different brain, maybe delete them, maybe make all thoughts that you just selected a different thought type or add a thought tag. A lot of different options there. But that's the high level overview of that process. And it all starts with control click on a Windows machine, command click on a Mac.
All right, cool. And there was a newbie, I can't remember the person's name, just getting started and wonderful. And this individual created a brain just kind of to play with. They now want to just delete that brain and start another brain. So just real quick, maybe opening the brain tabs and talking a little bit about brain management. I don't know if you have a brain you can delete or maybe just show.
Oh yeah, I can find one. Absolutely.
That would be great. And then after that, I think I've covered everything, but I'm going to give the floor to Juan because he's been jamming on Q&A in case Juan has any more questions that you want to bring up for Matt to demo.
Great. Well, first and foremost, you can see I'm running the brain in dark mode. I really like dark mode. I have different wallpapers for all the different brain databases that I utilize. So I can see just visually and know, which particular brain I happen to be in. And that brings us to the fact that you can have more brain than one. You can create one brain with all of your information. Great. There's no right or wrong. You can create smaller topic specific brains. That's what I do. So if I click on this little plus sign here, I open up a new tab and it takes me to my brain list. So these are all of the available brains that I have access to, created by someone else and shared with me, created by me for a particular topic. Every 101 class that I teach on Fridays that we've talked about, I create a new brain from scratch. So you can see how quickly and easily you can start creating a brain. Before my next Friday class, I have to delete that brain because I'm going to create it again. So let's delete it now. This brain, as you can see, has these little radio signals here. That is identifying that this brain is syncing to the cloud. There's an online version, and I've got local access to the brain. The proper process for deleting a brain once and for all, forever and all time, is to delete the online version first and then your local version. So I'm going to click on the context menu and I am going to delete the remote brain. So confirming, hey, you're deleting this. That remote brain is going to be gone from the server. Yes. And it's gone from the server as soon as that little icon, there it goes, turns into a computer screen. That's telling me I only have a local copy of this, the 101 Friday brain. And now I can click on the context menu again and permanently delete that local brain. So if you do sync that brain to the cloud, just simply delete the online version first, the remote brain, then delete the local. And as you can see in a second, it's going to be gone. And I've got the rest of my brain list to go through. And there's plenty of brains in here. I could probably start some spring cleaning here and deleting some of those brains. And with that, Juan, did you have any specific questions? Thank you, Shelley.
Hey, Matt. Yeah. There's a few questions.
Okay.
One of them is definitely to see if this network map brain is available.
It certainly is. So if you go to www.thebrain.com/apps, APPS, and here I'll just go to the Brain website. And under Learn, you can go down to Applications. You can find entire webinars like today's on specific topics. So you are more interested in using the brain for presentations, for company operations or project management. Today's webinar all about IT resources and so forth. So we have a link here, but the video is going to be updated with today's recording and today's brain examples. So from that link, and everyone that joined the webinar today will receive an email with a link to rewatch this at your own pace, and also visit this page to download sample brain databases or just see them online. The online link is there as well, so you can browse through this brain through the cloud. And Juan, did you have anything else?
Let me see here. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of questions. Let me
Yeah,
see.
Shelly mentioned that that you were busy with questions. That's a good sign.
Yeah, most people are asking about the official release date for 14.
Yeah. So
It's a moment.
absolutely. That's a good point. Thank you. I demoed in the Brain 14 today. The Brain 14 is beta. If you don't feel comfortable with beta, or if you can't, your organization says no beta software. Great. Stay on the Brain 13. The Brain 14 is available, www.thebrain.com/thebrain14. You can have both installed on your machine, but you can only run one or the other at a time. And you run the same brain databases. So all the brains that I used to run in 13, I run them now in 14. As far as dates, though, we don't give release dates, just, for fear that we'll miss it, or maybe we want to add something else, or sometimes, this is in active development. Adding feature X disables feature Z. So, we're still beta software. There will be a release candidate, so keep an eye out for a release candidate. And even you'll notice if you go to the Brain website, you don't see anything about the Brain 14 there. So it's still in beta. You'll see the release candidate available for a time. So then we're just verifying, okay, last call, any bugs out there, any issues that you're running into, or new features that you don't understand, what have you. We'll test it out that way for a while before the official release. But I will share with you that if you purchase the Brain now, today, the Brain 14 will be included. You'll be able to upgrade to the Brain 14 at no extra charge or cost. So don't feel like, well, I'll just wait till 14 comes out. Purchase today, you'll be allowed to upgrade to the Brain 14 at no cost. Great. Awesome. Yeah. So thank you. And thanks to everyone for joining today. Shelly, any last minute questions that you saw?
No, I just get it in your brain so you can see it and expand on it. And all as you mentioned, all our templates are available. If you have any specific examples, we do have live support representatives that can work with you. We will publish all the network map. The project management map brain seem to be quite popular. We'll make sure we have that one available to you as a resource, as well as the Thriving in the Unknown brain that has a little bit more on the business continuity stuff. So get you guys all ready to go and future ready for your IT or business processes. And just thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.